Welcome back to our bonus episode for We Were Gamers. We still have Agent Z, Zero Cool, with us because we're going to talk some Twin Peaks right now, as we've teased a little bit on this show for too many episodes, right, JJ?
We've been promising it, and here it is. We're finally delivering on promises. Yes.
It's the new year on We Were Gamers, and we deliver.
Eventually.
Z is a cinephile. That's a good word. And someone that I
don't know if I'd say that, but
you're a cinephile. You qualify. You're someone that I've bounced my wariness of Twin Peaks off of multiple times, and I would say a fan of David Lynch as well. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I've recently completed watching the second season. I told you, and I've told JJ in the past, that I tried to watch the first season and I basically quit at that point. And you and he and other people told me I really had to give it another shot. Then I worked my way through it. Some background was that I did not know the second season was much, much longer than the first one. So that kind of jaded me a little bit.
Man, really, did it need to be?
Yeah, we'll get to my impressions in a second and open up the conversation, but we're doing this now.
I guess it's worth saying, like, we're going to spoil every single thing that there is to spoil about Twin Peaks, probably at some point.
Oh, so, yeah. Huge spoiler.
If you haven't watched the first season and the second season, or if you don't care, great. But if you are wary of those spoilers for a show that came out in the 80s, be warned.
Well, frankly, even if you did spoil it, people wouldn't believe you. So, I mean,
in some of the cases, that's for sure. Like,
from the way it starts, who killed Laura Palmer to the conclusion we're left with after you watched it all, I don't think people would be like, "You're making it up." They're not going to believe that. She was killed by a forest spirit, a malevolent forest spirit named Bob, inexplicably, and he did it because of creamed corn. Or something to do with creamed corn. And they'd be like, "You're fucking with me. That's not what happens. I'm going to watch it anyway."
Yeah.
And then the lady goes back to high school and gets superpowers. And there's this lady who pets a log. And
the log lady.
All right. Well, the
log lady is amazing. Yes.
The new season comes out this... it will have happened by the time this airs, actually. May 21st is when the new third season starts on Showtime.
So excited.
You're jamming, aren't you? You're ready.
I'm like trepidly excited. I'm fearing the excitement because I want it to be good, but I am concerned it will be bad.
Some healthy skepticism is a good thing because it's been a very long time to try to rekindle the magic that was the original show.
26 years, right?
It's a good amount of time.
A long time.
26 years, because I noted in the very final episode that they mention, "I'll see you in 25 years." Yes. Literally. And almost 25 years to the year. I mean, we're like 6 months off, basically. They're restarting the show. Do you think that was planned?
It's all part of the master plan.
Unlikely, but I think that it is it's extremely good excuse to put the band back together, as it were.
Yes, and that's an excellent metaphor or analogy for this. Andrew, you're the English major. Is it an analogy or a metaphor?
Well, you need to continue what you're going to say, and then I can tell you.
Oh, right, of course. No, I was saying that's an excellent metaphor / analogy, I think, because when you get a band back together, who is the audience? You have to ask yourself that. And is the audience the original people who watch the show, or is it a whole new generation of people who are going to watch it now? And tuning your band for that audience is, to me, the key of whether or not this show will work again. Because if it's just a throwback and we get all the old references, I think it could wind up being very lame.
How can this be anything except for a throwback and references to people that watch the original show, given the extent of insanity that we're going to talk about?
they can make a new mystery, right? They can do a new thing. Like it's not impossible to, Stranger Things was a throwback, right? But it was a new show, and they did a new stuff with it. If it was just call outs to like the 80s were cool, then like no one would have watched it.
I think David Lynch is smarter than that. So yes, I think that would be the way this new show will go, which you're describing, JJ.
Yeah, I hope so.
I worry about the sequel nature of this, making it fairly lame.
I won't spoil what I thought about the end yet, but let's just say it ends in what you could honestly say is kind of a cliffhanger.
Let's say it's unsatisfying.
It's unsatisfying.
Because it is.
How do you start a new show, irrespective of what I thought about it so far? How do you start a new show without addressing the old show when you leave with a cliffhanger?
So I guess there is a point. Have you seen the movie, Andrew?
There's a movie?
Yeah.
There's a movie. Oh, you didn't know?
It's called Fire Walk With Me, and it is JJ, I don't know how you feel about this. I did not find it very successful.
No, it's not a good movie. And let's also be clear that the movie doesn't resolve really anything either.
Mm-hmm.
I heard there was a book too.
All of a sudden, I don't know about that. I didn't know there was a book. Seeing it isn't going to like answer all the questions or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So
does it get us out of the log jam of the end of did it come after the show?
Yes.
And does it move us to somewhere that they could start a new show the way that you're talking about?
No.
It's funny, and this is very David Lynch. It attempts to answer the questions you didn't have without answering the questions you do have.
Well, that is a summation of the entire series.
There you go.
So instead of an explanation of what the fuck just happened at the end of season 2, you get an explanation of who these forest spirits are exactly and what they want.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't mind that.
But it's not a satisfactory explanation, but it is an attempt to explain their origin.
So it doesn't answer really any of your questions, but it does answer questions. They just weren't the ones you were asking.
And honestly, I feel like it worked less well because of that. It attempted to explain parts of the mystery that I felt just leave them a mystery. It's okay. So that the movie lacked a distinct, for me at least, purpose.
My reason for not finishing it the first time is I couldn't get past how soap opera-y the first 7 or 8 episodes were.
Yeah, it really does play up the like schlocky, like, ooh, is he going out with her? Or is he cheating on her with him? And like aspect of the like American rural town soap opera where everyone knows everyone's name kind of thing.
The mystery in the first season of Laura Palmer's murder was not a central focus. It was, but it wasn't. They were never really chasing a bad guy. There was no hot trail that we were finding every episode that was, it was just a meandering mess. And then we get to the second season.
Well, and this is the thing. How do you appraise a piece of work without including its historical context?
Okay.
It's a question for the ages. There were a lot of things going on in the background, to me at least, that contributed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Twin Peaks was suddenly popular. So the second season, going back into it...
yeah, that first season was a phenomenon. People really loved it.
The network bizarrely decided or instructed them to wrap up the mystery. Because they were sensitive to criticism that maybe this mystery had no answer. They felt like they had to wrap it up. There was that going on. David Lynch went away to make Wild at Heart, I believe. And I think Northern Exposure was on around that time too. It's funny because I talk about it as if I lived through this. I didn't. This is my understanding of it. But Northern Exposure was popular at that time, which was also a show about kind of the eccentric people that live around a small town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that influenced some of Twin Peaks, like
Twin
Peaks shifted focus. I think they were just killing time till David Lynch came back to wrap up whatever the hell the show was about.
I think that once they kind of the decision to decide who the murderer was and what the conclusion of that story was going to be in the first season kind of killed the show in a way that like, oh, there wasn't going to be more. And like the goal was probably, at least in the way I saw it, like it probably was meant to not have an answer. Or like this forest spirit thing was just going to be something they hinted at for like seasons and seasons, and they never really, explained directly. And eventually kind of the murder mystery stuff would keep poking up every now and then, but would kind of fade into the background with the rest of this weird, soap opera-y stuff eventually taking front and center, kind of like what happened in the second season.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think that may have been the plan all along, but then like by telling you who the murderer was at the end of the first season, you're just like, oh, okay, now there's nothing to talk about. They wrote themselves into a corner,
Yeah, and all you were really left with was you're right, the side stories with the people, and all you were really left with was, well then, okay, we found out who killed her, but why?
I don't actually dislike the forest spirit stuff that much, and I actually kind of like the idea that there's this army, base that's trying to figure out the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, and they're, you know what? That's kind of cool, and it's not out there, right? I mean, they did this stuff in X-Files, and that's a great show, and having a through line that's kind of mysterious, and that is cool. But we've got also this like high school soap opera played out by 30-year-olds, and then actual 30-year-olds going back to high school and dating wrestling teammates, and like what?
Yeah.
Like there's this just mess of like small town disaster happening on top of this story, and like what is the point of watching what the football player and his girlfriend are doing with their her invalid husband that ends up being some sort of weird chained dog to the bad guy that shows up mid-season 2 that we've never even heard about? Like, what the hell is happening?
It's David Lynch, man. I really truly feel with a lot of his work is you're either really digging it and along for the ride, as bizarre as it is, or you're not, and you're hating it every second of it. I feel like David Lynch is a very polarizing filmmaker, and you either think those sidetracks are really funny and amusing and bizarre, or you're having the WTF reaction.
Well, they're certainly bizarre. I don't think anyone is going to argue they're not bizarre, but like some of them are fun and work, and some of them just seem like complete sidebars that have no purpose and are there to have no purpose. And like, I enjoyed some of them more than others, and just, it just, like the unevenness of the second season, I think, is really evident. It's
worth noting that you mentioned X-Files earlier, Andrew.
I mention it because it's a show that I personally love, and there's elements of mystery and supernaturalness that are grounded in the reality of modern life, right? So Lynch at some points in the show is hinting that there's this sub world of this White Lodge and Black Lodge and pure evil that can leak out into our reality and can form human shape as these people's doppelgangers that exists and can take over and has real reactions. And that part of it is interesting. And seeing this, FBI agent try to navigate what is happening here that's really beyond ourselves, and can I immerse myself in that reality, much like Fox Mulder did? And he, just like Fox Mulder, loses himself in this
he goes native in a way, right?
He goes native into these realities. That part of it is true, and it is echoed in things like Stranger Things, where Hopper drags himself down into this alternate reality, right? That part is great.
Twin Peaks made a show like X-Files possible. A show like Lost became possible. Twin Peaks kind of blazed a trail when the only other examples of a show even remotely like this were things like Northern Exposure.
Yeah.
It's like the supernatural and the real sort of mixing together hadn't really been done much on TV.
Did you ever watch a show called Millennium?
No.
Okay, so Millennium was like a weird X-Files related spin-off with one character where it just delves into the occult all the time. And this and Millennium suffer from the same problem of trying to be too encompassing of worrying about the world built around it. So what I see here is that in the first season, JJ actually made the assertion that he liked the first season more than the second season.
And I do.
There's no question it's better.
Yeah, I think most people will agree with that.
I'm going to disagree with it in a second, and here's why. The first season is too concerned with the world of the town and worrying about what every single character he introduces does in the town and how it's related. And that's the same problem Millennium had. It creates this world of spies and secret societies, and it has to explain every single one of them. And in the first season, he's worried about every single football player and what they're doing and their reaction. And oh my God, James. What a
James
waste.
gets so much worse in the second season.
Yes,
though.
he does.
This is true.
But in the first season, I think he's fine.
No, he's a waste of time in both seasons. But at least in the second season, Lynch starts to realize it,
Damn.
and James rides
Cold.
off into the sunset in California, and we never have to see him again.
Well, we got to hear him sing now.
Oh, Jesus.
That scene is amazing.
Oh, my God.
Seriously,
It's really something.
Can we play a clip of him singing? Just
Yes,
that? It's amazing.
Okay, I'll put James singing in here.
I'm glad I don't have to listen to this while we're recording, because I really don't need that.
It's so bizarre.
I agree with you that there are worse moments, and season 2 is just a complete and utter mess. But season 2, to me, Lynch at least gets to the point. There's other stuff happening here, and he didn't murder his own daughter because he wanted to, or he's just like a murdering fool or creamed corn or whatever. There's some other shit going down in the background, and now we're going to explore it. And this FBI agent just hasn't been just hanging around this town thinking about buying property and losing himself in the natives. It's bigger.
It's fair to say that like the second season kind of gets to like what is going on, because it does eventually. It takes a while, but it does. But the stuff that I liked in the first season is, you know, it's like it sets the stage in a lot of ways. Like this murder case kind of just sets the stage to, you know, tell you, look, this is some weird stuff that happened in this town. Now here's this town. The problem is that the second season feels so uneven because the various stories in it are of like vastly different consequences, right? You're like, oh, she's back in high school and is a wrestler now for some reason. Well, that doesn't feel like consequential. It's a weird happening. It would be like a one episode thing in a sitcom, right? Yet it goes on for like half of a season.
Yeah. I think though that if you could cut the chaff, right? If you could cut it and you could take the second season and make it equal in length, 8 episodes to the first season, you have a vastly superior story.
Yeah, it's wonderfully weird. When you say it's a mess, Andrew, you're right. It's a wonderful mess. It's a mess that I can tune into.
To be clear, like I'm not trying to say that I didn't enjoy my time watching the second season. I did. I had a good time. And like, as long as you understand, it's like watching a bad movie, right? Like I am a person who enjoys watching bad movies. This is a bad TV in a lot of cases, right? Like there is definitely some like, why was this even made? Like, what's happening here? I'm just so like, why? And like, I get that same feeling when I watch stuff, you know, like really bad movies, which I like to do sometimes. And so it's the like kind of, if you know you're going in for the schlocky kind of like nature of it and it's going to play up the soap opera stuff, jump along for the ride and be like, okay, I guess we're going to learn about the exploits of the log lady today. Like, here we are.
Well, so what's interesting to me about my own personal reaction to the story, and I don't know if this happened to either of you, is I got primed by season 1 to expect all the stupid high school bullshit of 30-year-olds complaining about their fathers, and, you know, like, I could tune out that this guy had a mental breakdown and thought he was a Civil War general for 5 episodes. Like, it's so funny just to even say. You know, it's like, okay, that happened. You can you get prepped for that and you can tune it out. And that's where I thought the second season, like, kind of kept me a little bit more engaged, because it was like, okay, so all these spirits and stuff, they have to try and pin them down and tackle them. And you've got this weird otherworldly thing happening that maybe is above their pay grade. The Black Lodge. The end.
Yes.
We were on a track of Agent Cooper understanding what's out there and what he's up against. And then a pretty actress shows up and starts guest starring in the show, and the whole thing falls apart. He wanders into the Black Lodge. Now we've got doppelgangers. Doppelgangers are murdering people. The doppelganger didn't murder the daughter. Cooper's doppelganger escapes, and now we have to explain what the hell that is. And now the show ends, and somehow we're going to move into another season. Wasn't Cooper going into this knowing what he was in for? Wasn't, you know, the point of this story that that these spirits overtake people without strong will? Where does this all take place in the larger story, and how does this beneficial and rewarding to people that actually followed what the hell David Lynch was trying to say when he just throws it all out? Like, here's the bathwater, gone.
Point of departure for the third season, I would assume, is Cooper has been in the Black Lodge all this time. Time has no meaning there, so he doesn't know he's been there for years and years and years, but he has been.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. He knows that she says, I'll see you in 25 years. So he's just going to wander the Black Lodge for 25 years, and then he's going to run into Laura Palmer again, and then he's going to, like, not realize it's been 25 years and get out? Or are we going to see what happens with the doppelganger and Cooper?
I believe so, yes.
So Cooper's doppelganger has been out there being Cooper this whole time, and now we're going to get Cooper back.
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like that ending was okay? Yeah, that's on par. Or to me, it kind of felt like we wandered into the Black Lodge. This is a deep space. This is the crux of the show, and it seemed like David Lynch trying to be weird for 35 minutes and not really giving an explanation of what Cooper's encountering there, other than his past.
My reading of it is Cooper sacrifices himself so that Laura Palmer can be freed. He basically...
Not Laura Palmer. What's her name? The other girl.
Oh, yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Jeez, yeah. So you're right. A lot of weird shit does happen in the second season. Isn't Heather Graham in it?
Huh?
No.
Yeah, that's Heather Graham.
It is.
It's Heather Graham. She shows up like 10 episodes towards the end, and
Yes.
And he goes in, he falls in love with her randomly, and Laura Palmer gets forgotten. And then what's his nemesis's name? I can't remember.
The other FBI agent.
The FBI agent that went insane. Annie Blackburn is who she plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's Heather Graham's character, I think. And she's the sister of the diner owner, but she's back in town. And Wyndham Earl takes her in there. And that's why he goes in, and it seems like he just charges in, but at the same time we know Cooper is head and shoulders ahead of everyone else in understanding what he's encountering. Like, right, he knows when he goes in there what he's going to see because he's seen it in his dreams, and the people in the Black Lodge have helped him solve this murder and getting Bob back under control, and Wyndham Earl has no idea, right? His soul gets taken away.
Yes.
It doesn't seem on track to then say that Cooper, when he says, okay, Annie Blackburn goes free, now he's stuck there forever.
Yes.
Well, that to me doesn't...
He basically sacrificed his soul, which apparently in this world means that the spirits can gain control of the doppelgangers.
But it
now,
totally
in that matter of time, you're right. Cooper's a fairly clever person. So through the course of time, can he figure out a way to get out of this? Probably.
Okay.
Maybe it took him 26 years, and maybe that's where this next season is starting from.
Okay, so what's
I hope not.
Weird to me then is that we go into this episode never knowing that doppelgangers exist or any of that other stuff, and it's just like, and the end is that Cooper is stuck, and he saves Annie, and yay.
We do know that doppelgangers exist, because in theory, Leland Palmer was the first example we saw in the show for someone who sold his soul to the Black Lodge in some way. I'm not sure that was ever explained, but sells his soul essentially, allows the spirit in, allows the spirit to control him, and then go about killing Laura Palmer and starting the events of the show.
It seems to be implied that Laura Palmer actually goes to the Black Lodge and falls in love with the guy that is in there or something. The dude that is backwards. I don't remember if he had a name.
Oh, the guy.
But I couldn't quite track all that.
The spirit or whatever.
The little guy?
Yeah.
Laura Palmer falls in love with the little guy?
Her diary mentions that she's met somebody that really, it allows her to explore herself or whatever, and everybody thinks...
Oh, I thought the implication was that... Yeah, that was Bob.
Okay,
right?
so she goes to the Black Lodge and falls in love with
Leland
Bob.
as Bob.
Right, and so then Bob gets out and takes over her father, and...
Yes.
See, this is the part that bothers me, and thank you for getting me back on track. It's explained that Bob comes out of the Black Lodge and overtakes her father's body and removes his soul because his spirit is not strong enough, right? And that's why he acts weird all the time. That's how it's explained before, and then all of a sudden it's doppelgangers instead of that.
I think it's a question of, well, what do you consider a doppelganger versus a person who's now controlled by another spirit?
Are the bodies the same? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Interesting.
So when I say Cooper's doppelganger's been out in the world and Cooper's been inside, I don't mean literally there's two Coopers. And in the doppelganger context, I mean like his physical form is being navigated by the spirit while his actual form is stuck in the lodge. And because the lodge has no time has no meaning there, he is there. He will always be there. He was there. All that, and same with Laura Palmer, and same with everybody else who's crossed paths with the Black Lodge at some point in time.
Oh, because they've been in the Black Lodge, they're always in the Black Lodge. But if their spirit isn't in the Black Lodge, their doppelganger is in the Black Lodge?
Yes, exactly. You got it. It makes total sense, right?
Dude.
Sense, quote unquote.
Look, I had to talk it through for 25 minutes to finally understand the ending.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I understood it, to be honest with you, and I was here for this conversation.
Here's the thing about David Lynch. The way I understand David Lynch, the reason I think a lot of people can either get with David Lynch or not get with David Lynch is he's not concerned with the narrative, per se. I feel like what he's always trying to grasp for and always including in his work is the feeling of a dream. And people think, well, the dream, it's fantasy, so it's all made up, whatever. He's not interested in the dream per se. I think he's interested in the edges of dreams as we experience them. So it's the parts of dreams where, to me, we start to realize we're having a dream. Or we start to wake up a little bit and then go back to our dream. And the adjustments our brain kind of makes to compensate for whatever story we were seeing while we were having a dream. To me, he's interested in those edges. How far can he go before you start to realize I'm having a dream? And to me, that's very interesting. That's something that you see in a lot of his work.
Is that maybe why he, what's the woman's name that goes back to high school? I mean, that's...
Nadine.
Okay. Well, so he didn't, I don't necessarily think he wanted to make a TV show the way TV shows were being made at that time. I think he was interested in the thing he's always been interested in much of his work. Those edges of dreams. So when people say they've seen the show, I think David Lynch essentially trolls people in Twin Peaks. I think he gives you something obvious to pursue. Who killed the girl? And he uses that as his excuse to then explore this other nebulous territory, this conceptual territory that he's clearly more interested in than the show. I think while he's doing that, he thinks it's funny he's making a TV show. TV shows at the time, drama shows, they were serials. They were soap operas. So I think he finds it amusing that he's using the soap opera construct to tell the story. I think that's why he does the Godard contempt thing of repeating the music.
Oh God!
Constantly,
that music
on a loop, just hitting you with it, because that's what the shows did. Oh, this is the mysterious part. Play the mysterious track. This is the romantic part. Play the romantic track.
I actually thought that was fun. Like, it was a fun throwback to how, well, I mean, since I was watching it, in the 2010s.
Right.
It was a fun throwback. Like, oh, remember when they used to do this in TV shows? That was weird.
Well, and there's always the soap opera playing in the background too, right? That they're all watching.
Yes. I find this all to be very intentional on David Lynch's part in terms of how he presents the story, the technical qualities, the music, and in terms of the characterization, the trials and travails of this little town of eccentrics. And I also think he's trolling you by dangling the carrot of who killed the girl. And then later in the second season, unraveling or trying to unpack that. But I think who killed the girl is his excuse. He's like, well, people are on board for this. They want to find out who killed the girl. So I'm going to throw more weird stuff at you and more weird stuff at you until you guys, the audience, realize you're dreaming.
So we're all Agent Cooper just exploring a reality that's happening without our input?
Yes.
Interesting thought.
It's deep. It's really deep.
Do you think that because some of us did not watch this as it was a phenomenon in the context of knowing how shows were on TV a little bit? I know what a soap opera is like. I know that they used to just play the same music over and over again. But at the same time, because I'm not part of the generation that watched this live, it doesn't age as well as it should have, or it doesn't speak to me as, oh, that's funny, or, oh, that's, just comforting to know that I'm watching it in a genre of something that's popular at the time.
It's up for debate. Honestly, we should talk to someone who lived through it. I didn't live through it either. I can only imagine what people thought about this show. I mean, this was a day and age when TV Guide was still the source for what was happening in TV.
Is this a case where, like, people that watched it in the time don't have as fond of remembrance for the show, or like barely remember it at all because they watched it and it was a zeitgeist thing and they saw it then and then they moved on? And the people that have kind of come back to it and lingered on it and seen it multiple times, in the past, like, watching it, from a view, like with the 2020 of hindsight, end up appreciating it a lot more.
I have a feeling that the audience for this is very millennial in terms of the Showtime show is not going to be targeting the original air audience.
Yeah, depending on who they calibrate it for, I think will make or break what this new show's going to be.
And I mean, that sure would make smart business sense anyway, disregarding any authorial intent or anything like that. Just like, if they want to make money,
that's what
probably target it towards modern audiences.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of, JJ. If it's just calling out all the the funny quotes and lines and remember when moments, to me it won't be very good at all. If David Lynch has his way and continues to just make a bizarre show, I think it will be really good. It's up for debate. We will find out soon enough.
Do you get the feeling that there was an answer for what had happened to Cooper, and there was an answer to this other spirit, the giant, that was trying to always curtail Bob, and that there was this direction that this show was going? Or was he kind of just like a dream, making it up as it happened, right? When you're dreaming, if you were using this analogy, you can kind of control the direction of your dream. And could Cooper, in a sense, control the direction of what was going to happen with these spirits? Or do we not know that there's an answer, and that when this comes out, it's going to just meander for a whole nother season?
I don't think in any of David Lynch's work he's ever revealed whose dream it is.
Let me rephrase it for you, Z. There's a moment now where the top shows are narrative driven shows, right? Stranger Things, huge phenomenon, narrative driven at the end of the day, despite the weirdness that happens. Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is a huge phenomenon, and it's a narrative driven story, even though we're going to start to enter territory spoilers where Bran is exploring the eternalness of time, right? He has and always will exist inside of the time stream narrative of that story, and has and always will affect it. And that sort of existential exploration is happening inside of just a super simple fantasy narrative of dragons and
who's going to be the ruler of this kingdom, right?
The spoiler nature of needing to see what happens each episode, that doesn't exist in Twin Peaks. Does David Lynch reimagine that story? Cooper's, story could easily become he's escaped, and now we're going to have the week to week, very full narrative of Cooper trying to regain and fight these forest spirits and find the White Lodge. And I could see an area where this becomes a super heavy narrative story. Or are we going to just drift along like the end of season 2?
It's up for debate. That's why I'm going to tune in on Sunday.
I think the interesting question, right? Like this push and pull of the like narrative stuff and the like weird side stuff. Andrew's right. Like the most popular shows on TV these days are these narrative stories where every week some big revelation or something is going to happen, right? And Twin Peaks is like, even the first season, like despite all of the twists and turns that happen in that show,
slow burn.
It's very much not that. Yeah, slow burn, right? Like the first 2 or 3 episodes, like is kind of just like, yeah, I'm driving up to this town. It's real relaxing. They have the fun stuff in the meeting all the cast of characters or whatever. Real slow burn, right? And so the show is kind of not that way, or not built to be that way. So it would be an interesting turn for them to sort of take it down a different road and go the like really heavy narrative stuff. Not that they couldn't. There's definitely enough stuff for them to do that if they want, but it would be a different thing.
I would disagree. I think what you guys are noticing is just, to me, more a consequence of the times. So maybe it might be done in a different way, or it might be an overt cliffhanger now. But if you go back and look at the original Twin Peaks, we do get this meandering storyline. But, like, for instance, at the end of the pilot, we do see Laura Palmer's mom scream as she has a vision of someone pulling the necklace back out of the dirt. Oh, who was that? What happened? And then we go to the next episode. I feel like there are little cliffhanger drops in the original show. If you look at them, they just might not be the same or as intense as you might see in narrative-driven shows now that are very much about tune in next week to find out what happened.
Okay. I think that's a fair assessment also.
There's a space here to be operated in by David Lynch if he can. It needs to come out of the soapiness is what I'm asking. Do you think he emulates the soapiness, or does he emulate modern times in the show?
It's a good question, and this is why it's so challenging. Again, to me, it always goes back to the intended audience question. There's reasons why people like Twin Peaks. Now you're going to bring the show back after 26 years. Do you emulate those reasons, or do you modernize it?
Yeah, and the show is really very difficult to separate from the time frame that it was in and takes place in, right?
Yeah.
It's a very of the times kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's why like there are so many modern shows and modern things that sometimes make references to Twin Peaks, or like maybe not overt references, but like a lot of their things to how Twin Peaks was, because of how different it was while still being in the way things were at that time. It pioneered, it both was the same and very different, right? Like all at once.
As someone who slogged through Inland Empire, where there's really not a narrative thread to be found, I have hope that David Lynch is going to bring his A game to this show. But there is so much like baggage now that it's carrying with it as a season 3 of a show that last aired 26 years ago, I think there are a lot of potential reasons why it's going to be terrible. I think we'll just have to wait and see.
There's a lot of stuff in that show, the first 2 seasons, that I watched and, like you just said, was a slog. Like the high school storylines with the characters that didn't directly relate to Laura Palmer's murder, or Audrey Horne's story basically after the first season when she gets turned down by Cooper. Doesn't really go anywhere. You know, she has this huge relationship with Billy Zane.
Or like Donna getting shipped off the island, basically.
Or even the log lady, right? She's in there and she's weird and she's a background character, and she and the general, they tell Cooper one useful thing in 30 episodes. Do you need or want, is there anything in these storylines other than Cooper and the Black Lodge and the White Lodge? Do you remember or have any fondness for any of these characters that you want to see come back?
I hope it's not a cast. I mean, that's one of my fears. I hope it's not a casting call for all the previous characters and like, oh, look at him, look at them. I hope it has, and those are aspects or those are qualities that I feel like sequels have. It's like the burden of being a sequel is you have to touch base with all of these people. I hope it doesn't become that though. I hope it just continues on as if, you hope
it's 26 years later without having to worry about telling everybody what happened in those 26 years.
Yeah, I hope the log lady doesn't come in. Hey, look, it's the log lady. Ha ha. Like all these in jokes now because we have to do that because it's a sequel per se.
I mean, unless they have a reason for the log lady to be there, and then it's fine if she's there, right?
Exactly.
Sidetrack and ask, other than saying that the spirits aren't what they seem to be, what is the point of the log lady?
She's an eyewitness.
To what?
To what happened. She heard, or to me, she's one of the red herring cues earlier in season 1 when Cooper's still trying to figure out what happened.
Right.
She heard and saw something that helps assist him in his investigation.
So then she's back in season 2 for I seem to have missed something because she tells them in season 1 what she saw. She tells them the owls aren't what they seem. Okay.
Right.
Next.
Yep. No, Andrew, it's a bit part, man. You don't have to have grandiose meaning to every bit part.
She also lives in the forest. The forest is inhabited by these spirits. And she's seen firsthand the devastation or not devastation, that's dramatic, but she's seen firsthand the effects of these spirits around her. And so her point of view is her clues that she gives Cooper along the way is from that insight of she kind of knows about this mystical quality of the forest.
I think I just had a revelation. Other than already having a revelation about what the ending means, is this entire show about deforestation?
Could be. There's a literal, what do you call it? A lumber mill, right? Isn't the lumber mill, like who owns the lumber mill, a point in the first season?
Yeah, until it burns down.
There's a lot of ink, there's a lot of critical ink spilled on Twin Peaks. That's another problem. That's another burden that this new show will carry with it. Because I've read analysis of Twin Peaks based on that very thing you mentioned, which is it really all just about nature and the encroachment of civilization, this town, on nature.
Right.
And one could argue, and there's certainly evidence for it, that the reason these spirits are upset to begin with is because the lumber mill is cutting up the forest.
Yeah, it is definitely one of it's a show that is evergreen in that every time you go back and watch it, if you put on a different lens, you can find something different about it. And Z is right. There's a lot, it's injustice for us to even attempt to summarize all of the arguments that people have made about the various ways you can view this show.
Yeah.
And, go out and search the internet and you can find 10 different people with 10 different opinions about this show every time.
To me, that's what makes good art. Great art, even. Will a new season of Twin Peaks sustain or weather the impact of the internet and forums and the endless analysis and YouTube videos, picking it apart scene by scene, trying to discover what the mystery is episode by episode?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So where people can guess the ending by cloud mentality of just shooting theories
Right.
until they've hit something that sticks.
Think about Westworld and the cottage industry of speculation and analysis about where Westworld is going. Will Twin Peaks weather that? Twin Peaks, as a show, as an institution, never had that circumstance to contend with. Now, it will.
And actually, it not existing sort of has worked to the benefit of that show in the past, right? Now you can go back and look on it as a whole work, and you don't have to pick apart every episode to see every plot point and try to suss out meaning from every line of dialogue, right? You now can go back and see over the course of this slow burn, oh, okay, this is what they were trying to work towards, or this is what this meant 7 episodes later.
Right.
Now it feels anyway like in shows like Game of Thrones and stuff where they don't give themselves the time to make that slow burn, or they aren't afforded the time to get to that place. So it'll be interesting.
Andrew, earlier you were talking about not, as you were watching it, not being sure where this was going. Again, JJ, the point you made, the benefits are in hindsight, looking at the show as a whole. At the time, people weren't sure where this was going, and in any good mystery, there are red herrings. There are characters introduced that don't pertain to the mystery, but at the time, we think they might. And I think that's as good an explanation as any as why there are so many tangent storylines spinning out of the original murder. The other thing to think about is the cultural context, the fact that the network insisted they resolve the mystery. David Lynch never wanted to solve the mystery, or at least didn't want to do it within the first season. So you have to read it a little bit with that in mind as well.
Totally hear that.
The show was such and not only did they make him reveal the mystery, but then the show was such a hit they insisted on another season.
Oops.
So what are you going to do with that? And then David Lynch lost interest, goes off to make a movie, leaves David Frost in charge of continuing the story until he decides to come back the last 2 episodes and wrap this shit up. That's what
Quote,
happened.
unquote.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that part, and that's kind of fascinating. But with so many storylines and characters and all that sort of stuff, and we talked about how we hope they don't all return, who's the character that you remember most or you want to see most come back, or at least get their due, so to speak, in the new show? And I can go first if you guys want a second to think about it.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see the hard of hearing FBI Bureau Chief Gordon Cole come back, who I totally forgot until I looked up the gentleman's name, was played by David Lynch.
Ah, yes. Yes.
I think Gordon Cole is the most interesting outside character to the entire thing. In terms of if you're going to just bring in something to break up the pace, we could have dropped half the red herrings and still had more than enough. But I think Gordon Cole offered Cooper his let his hair down moments, right? You got to see that Cooper thought somebody else was more of an outsider than him.
Including just a little bit of business that he can't hear, so has to shout, makes it for me.
Oh,
Definitely.
He's aces. And then when he when he can hear everything Shelley Johnson says, that's kind of a weird proof, right? That there's something else to Gordon Cole in terms of maybe what you're talking about earlier. It's a dream, or Gordon Cole can hear truth in a way that other people can't, right? Why can he hear Shelley Johnson but not anyone else? There's something deeper to Gordon Cole.
There you go.
All right, who's your guy, Z? Or girl? Or girl?
Honestly, I think one of my favorite characters was Hawk.
Oh,
the
yes.
sheriff.
Okay, that's a good one.
I don't understand how Hawk was not more of a deal than Hawk was. Well, who cares about Deputy Andy? Hawk. Give me Hawk all the time.
Deputy Andy was the comic relief.
Largely, one of the elements of the mythology of the story that I was fascinated by was the Native American undertones of the forest and the forest spirits. And the fact that he was Native American and he's one of the first people I think to describe the Black Lodge, White Lodge.
The dynamic.
He's the first one to allude to that. The fact that he's a sheriff. I thought I've liked his character throughout the show, and I think he's actually one of the people coming back. So we shall see.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of Hawk
really
and
good
of
one.
Cole, so maybe we'll go 3 for 3 with JJ.
We didn't really talk about it. This is again bad podcasting, but it is true. The Native American tribe he says he's a part of is an actual tribe, and they actually do have a Black Lodge, White Lodge,
It's good that they based it in some kind of reality.
I mean, not mythology, but mythos maybe is what the word you mean, right? Because mythos is
a spiritual beliefs.
It's their form of religion.
It's their spiritual system, yeah.
And I think that we did a disservice, and you're probably right, of not talking about Hawk more, because he becomes the basis for Cooper's unsolved mysteries in a way, right? He's the only one, even though he and Truman are the two closest characters on the show, and they can confide in each other, and Truman's willing to go anywhere Cooper's willing to go. Hawk instead is more like the most knowing of everyone, despite no one asking him, right?
Exactly.
He knows the answers to all these things, and when someone says there's a forest spirit, he says, "Yeah, I know that."
Because of course there would be, right? He knows that it's just how there is. Of course there are forest spirits, right? That's just how his belief system is, right?
Exactly.
All right, JJ.
All right. Well, I've had a long time to reminisce on it. And I don't know that there's any one particular character I want to see come back. But I do want their, the strange obsession that show had with coffee to show up.
Okay, coffee is a character.
And cherry pie.
And cherry pie, right?
Man.
The weird quirks of he drinks, he's it's a damn fine cup of coffee. That's the stuff. That's what I want to come back.
Deep black cup of Joe.
Deep black cup of Joe.
Okay. To add on to that, JJ, what I think is funny is my wife is a super healthy person. Everything organic, eats healthy all the time. She craves donuts when we watch Twin Peaks. And something about the way they're eating donuts or what they say about the coffee and donuts is very appealing about the show.
Can you explain, or maybe we can do for half a second.
I don't drink coffee, let's be clear. I don't even like coffee.
What is with, I know that the donuts are in there. What is with that? They're always stacked. Do you notice that?
Yes.
It looks good. It looks good for the camera. That's why.
Well, they always look delicious, and you want one.
There's many ways to make those donuts look good for the camera, and in fact, stacking them, other than when they're laid out on the conference table that one time, but there's times when they're out in the middle of the woods, and they're stacked up on a tiny little table, but they're stacked. There's never a box. They're never disorderly. There's never a single one unless someone's eating one.
Andrew, let me bring this back, circle back around to the Native American discussion. Totems.
Whoa,
donuts are the totems.
Whoa.
Boom.
Why did you blow up this podcast at the very end?
And you just cut right there.
Okay, so
donuts are totems. Cut.
You're onto something, JJ. That's brilliant. You're right.
But it could be. That's the thing. That's part of what makes this show great, is that you can make insane assumptions like that.
All right,
Yes,
I'm
you're
writing
right,
down the
you're
donut
right.
totems. We're all going to watch the new season of Twin Peaks, and we're going to come back and we're going to do another bonus at the end of it, and we're all going to talk about what we thought and what we saw and our reactions. And this gives us a whole season to think about donut totems and what donuts really could mean.
It was a pleasure having you on. Again, Zero Cool. And I really enjoyed having this little discussion. I'm glad you got through it, Andrew.
I forced myself, and I'm not upset that I did. It is a whole different feeling having watched the entirety of it rather than the first 8. Right? You get
Right,
something
very
deeper from
different.
it, and it's not bad. There are some very redeeming qualities in that show, and I hope season 3 really takes up the mantle in a way. Again, Zero Cool, thanks for coming on. If anybody didn't listen to, obviously our bonus podcasts are super popular, so maybe go back and listen to the one just before this one where we did an interview with Zero Cool and why he's on with us in multiple areas. It's pretty fascinating.
I agree.
And thanks for your cinephile expertise and getting us on track with understanding the ending of Twin Peaks.
Fair enough.
All right.
All right, we'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening to our bonus episode on Twin Peaks. Bye, y'all.
Thank you for having me, guys. Wonderful discussion.